Three, one, two, three. Yep, you can hear me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Grand Rapids Library and our program, Speak Up GR, Individual Rights and Community Policing. I'm so happy that you all have decided to join us for our discussion today. We'd like to thank the Grand Rapids Public Library Foundation for funding this program. Without their support, this program would not be possible. In this community discussion, our panelists will review the rights of individuals when interacting with law enforcement, how racial bias affects the whole community, and the city's latest efforts to improve community policing and safety. A couple of housekeeping issues. I want to remind everyone, if you park in the library lot, you want to get a green ticket from Angela. She's at the back door. If you didn't get one before you leave. There's surveys on your chair. Please fill those out. If you need a pencil, we've got some in the back. There's a code of conduct listed on the paper that has the bios. We want you guys to kind of adhere to those rules there. And we're going to welcome our moderator for today's discussion is Mary Hartfield, who has an extensive background in community involvement, entrepreneurship, strategic planning, and leadership training. She is an experienced professional with over 35 years of work in banking, finance, nonprofit administration, and community and economic development. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Right, we're excited to have everyone here to have a community discussion about individual rights and community policing. How we're going to start out is I'm going to introduce the panel. I'm not going to read their bio. You can read their bio right here on the sheet, and they may add a little bit to their bio. We're going to go 45 minutes into me leading some questions, and from there we can go 45 minutes where you have the opportunity to ask a question. And I'm saying again, a question. Okay, I know this is a passionate subject. We have stories, but we really want to focus on asking the question and not tell the stories that everyone that wants to ask a question will be able to. Okay, agree? Agree? All right, thank you. Okay, I want to introduce to my left Rod Mont. Okay, he is from ACLU. We also have a panelist, attorney Stephen Drew. Also, we have Sergeant Chief. Did I say that right? Deputy Chief. Okay. Deputy Chief Eric Payne. If you guys want to add anything to your bio that you'd like to say to the audience before we get started.
Practicing since '74. So what is that? 43 years, not 35. Grew up here in Grand Rapids as well. Went to South High School.
Opportunity to look at the bio, but I've been with the police department for 30 years, and in my present role as deputy chief, that was since September of last year. And prior to that, I was a captain in charge of investigations, and I've been a captain in charge of service area with the department.
My name is Rod Mont, as you mentioned. I am the field director for the ACLU of Michigan. I've been here for about 7.5 years. As field director, my job is organizing people in an effort to change laws or not change laws, or to help build legal cases or to sustain legal cases. I've spent a lot of time working on racial justice issues. I led our school-to-prison pipeline campaign for a number of years, which resulted in us changing the state's zero-tolerance law last year. I spent a lot of time working on juvenile justice issues, right now working to reduce mass incarceration.
Right, thank you. Just want to give a little context of why we're here. So first of all, there was a study, there was a study that an independent that they hired to do April 2017 on stop data analysis study. One of the things that it came out was that black motorists are stopped at a higher rate than would be expected by the presence in traffic. For 2013 to 2014, black motorists are 1.85 times more likely to be stopped than expected. For 2015, Black motorists are twice as likely to be stopped than expected. Oh, I'm sorry. And then our post-stop results were Black motorists are searched for more than their presence among motor stops, and Black motorists are no more likely to be carrying contraband when searched than a non-Black motorist. And then there was that incident where Grand Rapids police detained innocent 11-year-old girl. Police Chief David said officers should have exercised discretion rather than handcuff the 11-year-old girl. It's a discredit to the way the community's been served. And then here, also, there was 5 unarmed Black preteens and teens that were stopped. The police union defended the actions of the officers who came under the fire for stopping 5 unarmed Black preteens and teens. One of the statements were by one mother was, "We can't stop thinking of the fact that what if one of our babies had made the wrong move?" Whose son is 14, it was involved in an incident. Black and Hispanic residents said they suffered discrimination and demanded training, testing for officers, biases, increased accountability to address race relations. Can you show the video?
And they'll ask you anything. Where you going? What are you doing? Where you come from? With the gun. Why did I just get singled out? Like as if like I did something wrong. Cuffed on me, and I never thought that would happen. It was just like a natural thing after a while. You get stopped by the cops all the time. Yeah, they pulled me against the wall, sticking guns at us. I didn't search you. Okay, what did I do now? Because it's not fair. I was terrified. Take a deep breath. You gotta not let it get to you. It's frustrating to be accused of something you know you didn't do. Fear starts to strike in. We want to like get riled up. So it's not just knowing you're right. Is knowing how to deal with it. Situations escalate because people don't know how to act around police officers. You know, poke at people. It's part of their job. Just don't give them anything to poke at. Knowing you're right, it's like a power. When I go into the street, I can feel well equipped. Words have power, for real. Learn your right and take the power that you have. what's your right, it can give you the best chance of being okay.
I've never yelled at a police officer. Never had. I just spoke, and they had to listen.
What you speak into the world would definitely answer back. I feel like knowing your rights is having a great deed of power.
Because the rights bring you back down to equal terms. No one has power over you, and you have power over nobody. We are the same.
That's true about it.
I guess my first question is when, we expect when we come into the community that the police are there to keep us safe, protect us. Why do we need to know our rights? You say right now more, it shows the incident report that more blacks are searched, stopped. Why do we need to know our rights?
I think it's important for us as citizens to know our rights here. I think, in preparing for this, I was recalling a story where I had an encounter with law enforcement. I was with my son, I have a 12-year-old. One day I was leaving work, and I noticed one of my hips got out of the habit. And so I went to pick my son up from school, took him home, figuring hey, he was sick. Go to the drugstore and get the full medicine. Back. And at an intersection, the police car approached here, and I realized at my hip. He looked at me. I go through the intersection. He does a U-turn as I expected to, and he pulls me over, and I find myself modeling. I think it's that important to know, right? Because there's going to come a day his own. He may have an encounter with someone who really doesn't.
And no, I don't know if anyone has ever downloaded the ACLU, what to do if you're stopped by the police, the immigration agents, or the FBI. I downloaded it years ago. I have 3 boys.
I brought hard copies.
Oh, good. Thank you. So I have 3 boys, so I had to download this early because I lived in Wyoming, and it used to be when you went through Wyoming on the weekend, all I saw was these people of color, male especially, just pulled over until we got the new police chief who's retiring. So that's the concern. Did you train up the right person to replace him? So I had, plus being followed with my family in the car and pull over, and the person asked me, where are you going? With a whole family in the car, grand police officer. So we had to pull it down early for our sons. When they get in the car, this is your right. So one of them says that you have the right to remain silent. What does that mean, remain silent? So the police officer asks you a question, you have the right to remain silent. Or what does that mean to say that statement? Both.
You might want to hear from the attorney on that.
Yeah,
but,
so it says,
yeah.
if you wish to exercise that right, you say out loud, I want to remain silent, and then what happens?
Right, but there are statutes. And if you're speaking of traffic stops, you are required to provide identification, registration, proof of insurance. What it means by you have a right to remain silent, the expectation is that you not incriminate yourself for some criminal act. So just basically, I can ask you any question. You have a right not to answer.
So I can tell you I'm going to remain silent.
Absolutely.
You can keep asking, but I don't have to.
Absolutely. Did I cover that well enough, or?
I have to have a disclaimer. I do a lot of civil work. I tend to sue the police. I don't do criminal law, and so those that do criminal law more on a regular basis might be able to answer it. But I do think if you're stopped and they ask you for identification or they ask for your driver's license, I think you're expected to give that information. Giving any other information crosses that line of remaining silent. Things that So let me piggyback a little bit. The reason it's important to know your rights, from my perspective, is it may give you some comfort and knowing how to react and what not to. You may think you know your rights, but being on the street, in my judgment, is not the time to prove how much you know by arguing, by escalating. An officer that's going to stop you without a lot of reason already may have a problem. And that problem may be he or she, sometimes it's a she, doesn't necessarily view you as part of the same kind of part of the community as they may otherwise. And let me say, most of the officers in every department are good. But there are always those that it's a power trip. And when you get stopped on the street, they have the power. They have the power to kill you. They have the legal right to kill you if they can call it justifiable. I can give you some examples of things I'm doing or what. So that is not the time to prove how bad you are, how right you are, and things of that nature. It is the time, if at all possible, to calmly show the officer the respect. The things that they showed on the video, to show them where your hands are, to say, I am reaching for my wallet, to not make quick actions, and things of that nature. So it is the time to know your rights, time to exercise them. Do not consent to a search of your car. Do not. A lot of people think I know what to tell them because I'm smart, and most of the time it gets you in trouble because what you say in front of the officer will either be recorded in writing or otherwise, and then later they know more than you of what crime they're suspecting, and it can be used against you later.
And something you brought up, can I ask you a question? Something I'm encouraging our officers, in fact, we're moving toward it. I want officers to have contact. Now, that doesn't have to be enforcement contact. That's stopping by, seeing somebody, say, hey, how you doing? That person has a right to walk away. But I think that's part of our problem, too. We need to be able to build those relationships within the community and have those conversations that are not enforcement action. So if everyone took their hand, I don't have to talk to the police, that's not going to help us in building those relationships either. Something that we're implementing here shortly, and it may seem like a really small thing, but a lot of our police officers don't have business cards. I want everyone on the department to have a business card to be able to say, I'm Officer Payne. I work in your area. Here's a number that you can call if you need to reach me. I'll get back to you 2 to 3 days, but somebody will be answering that message or reviewing those messages every day. If it's something that's urgent, they'll get back. Somebody else will get back in touch with them. That's all part of building that relationship and talking to officers. I think you're speaking more in a traffic stop context.
Right. So we're going to talk about community policing, but I kind of want to focus right now if you're stopped by the police. And one of the things says you have the right to refuse to consent to a search of yourself, your car, or your home.
Unless there's reasonable suspicion.
So what is reasonable suspicion? A police officer can just say, I have reasonable suspicion, start searching?
No. You got to be able to articulate that suspicion. And every circumstance is different. And for me to sit up here and say A, B, and C, then they could do it, I can't do that. It's that officer being able to articulate why they took those actions. If they cannot do that, then we have some issues that we're going to look at internally, and then maybe eventually some attorney who's going to look at it and say the officer didn't, then ultimately some judge and jury will rule on that in the civil process. And also the criminal process. Cases will get tossed out.
And then it says, if you are not under arrest, you have the right to calmly speak.
So all of the rights that we include in that card are rights. And it's important that you understand, as they were saying, context. You have to know the example I provided. So, like, myself that out. Make sure you don't have what walk up, right? Understand your rights, willing to recognize them. He's the guy who had a bad day. Right? You also have to understand, and I've right, say you don't have a right to search the car out. I can say, go ahead here, like that.
Everything is context. Um, I would say most of the time you don't want to let them search the car, but if you know you don't have anything in it and you say no, I mean, it kind of depends on the officer. You get a feel for where you are. The reason we have bad situations, in my mind, where you don't have community policing and you have police that think that look at the community they are serving as nothing but criminals, a war zone. They're at war with you. I represented, along with a number of other attorneys in Benton Harbor, a number of people, more like we had over 100 clients total. We represented about 15 or 20, where the police officers were planting dope in the cars and of them. The police officers eventually got caught and went to prison. And that's the only way the cases, there was one major one that was doing it. His name was Collins. He was white. There was an African American or black sergeant that was complicit in it. Both of them went to jail. They looked at getting convictions as what they were there for, whether they followed rights or not. Some of these clients were not model citizens, so to speak, but they did have rights. And the officers had a pattern of planting dope on them, in them, and taking their money, et cetera, et cetera. So it is all contextual to an extent. If you have an officer stopping you, you'll get a feeling pretty quickly where that officer might be coming from, and that may determine how you react in that situation. The worst thing to do is to react, argue, things of that. You do have the right to walk away unless they handcuff you. I did have a case where a 5'4" African American woman was coming out of her house to her car. A 5'8" African American man had stolen some Nicorette from Walgreens on Boston Street. They didn't arrest her. They came, they put her down on the ground in January, they handcuffed her, they put her in the back of a car. We sued on that. And the fact that she was a Gulf War veteran probably had something to do with why I chose to take it. If it had been someone with a long criminal record and maybe a male, but not, 5 inches different, it's a little hard. This is not the easiest place to sue the police sometimes as well. But it is a place to make a difference.
So you're saying that it's up to the citizen to get a feel of how pulls me over and how he's feeling or acting that day.
Yeah.
I think you should know your environment.
I mean, you know your environment. You're in your car, and the cop pulls you over, and I got to figure out what mood he's in today, how I react to him.
Maybe I'm living in La La Land. I can only speak for Grand Rapids. Now, you bring up Benton Harbor. There's a long history of things down there with their law enforcement. I worked a case many years ago, and I didn't talk to the locals. I talked to the task force that was down there. We know of other agencies out there, and I don't want to single out Benton Harbor. I don't want to single out any other agency in Kent County. I can speak for Grand Rapids. There's a high level of standards that we have, and something that we have that's been a part of our department for the last year or so are our body cameras. Prior to that, we had in-car video, so everything was being recorded at least anyway. But now we've taken it a step further, and we're utilizing body cameras. Officers, we're not afforded to have a bad day. It's just not acceptable. We're the one profession where we have to have our game on every day. Occasionally, officers do have bad days. We hold them accountable. But we're not allowed to have bad days. Citizens shouldn't have to judge whether or not an officer is having a bad day or not. We have to have our game on. So I differed a little bit on that. I will say, though, I can only speak for Grand Rapids. There's people within Kent County may have problems with other agents. Quite frankly, I was pulled over one time, and I know I was racially profiled. I won't go into details because if I told the story, you wouldn't believe it. Well, I will tell the story. I was in uniform in my police car with my lights and sirens on. And a certain person, I don't mind singling him out because, as Steve mentioned earlier, the majority are good. And I have high respect for the Michigan State Police. There's one particular officer working in this area. He actually pulled me over. And it got back to me, well, you know, there's a lot of imposter stuff. I'm in my uniform with my lights and sirens on, responding to a critical incident. I feel it. I know. It does happen. All I can say about Grand Rapids is we hold our officers to a high standard. I cannot sit here and say that you would never encounter a bad Grand Rapids officer. We've recently had an incident where an officer was terminated. He actually resigned because we were going to fire him. The public didn't really care about what he did. He actually held a gun to a guy's head that was handcuffed. It's not acceptable. So when I speak about things, I'm speaking about Grand Rapids. I fully acknowledge there's law enforcement throughout this country. Some of you may know Walter Scott incident down in, I believe, South Carolina. If anyone tried to justify that incident from law enforcement, I'll sit and talk to them. I mean, that was an innocent person. That was a person that was involved in criminal activity, but he was murdered by a police officer. That police officer is now serving time, which is where he should be.
Understood about what I was talking about assessing the officer. That's just self-protection. When you get stopped, or if you know where you are, if you get to a lighted place where there's other people, you do that. But just like everything else, you can tell when an officer stops you sometimes where that officer is coming from. I've had officers stop me that have been cordial. I've had some that stopped me that had real problems. And that I got stopped just like you did. I just happened to be talking to a police officer client of mine. If you're a black man, you're going to stop. I've been stopped when I'm young. And I happened to be talking to a police officer client because I represented a number of officers with none of them anything started in a discrimination move. But you do need to understand your environment at the time when you stop, just like everything else.
But like the mother was saying, she said if those black boys had made one wrong move, maybe they weren't be alive today. So you had pull-out guns, which you're saying what they did was right in order, right? Pull guns out.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're speaking of the Kraken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me give you the context, and full disclosure, I represent Hodges, who was the 7-year-old that was handcuffed.
Two different.
And I know that.
Okay.
I'm getting
all right.
ready to talk about the Kraken.
Okay.
I looked at that. That was a African American man that said some kid near the Croc had a weapon, and they had red and black. Now, red and black is a color that a lot of there were some kids, very innocent, walking home. Some of them had red and black on. Police did stop them. They pulled guns on them. They made them walk backwards. They made them crawl backwards, and the mother is right. And as the mother would feel, it is wrong. Would they have done that in a white neighborhood? Who knows? Because we always get into this dehumanization of the black male, the so-called violent black male. Believe me, if it was black males shooting up these schools, if these were black males with AR-15 shooting up these schools, they would be confiscating them. They'd be talking about it's our violent nature, not the aberration of somebody having a mental issue. It's because we're naturally violent. Look what they did to the Black Panthers that held guns legally, et cetera, et cetera. And the AR-15 would be banned from black people by now. Okay? So there is a difference in how blacks are treated and whites because we don't look like them and because of the, I'll call it the violinization. That's the word I just made up. If basketball players fought as much as white hockey players, how would you look at that? You might look at it a little differently. These are inherently violent animals. That's what we've grown up with. Okay, so that's part of what we're dealing with here. But from my perspective, the problem was somebody legitimately said that group generally fitting the description had a gun. They were going to bring out statistics of how they found guns on teams around, etc. So when you're looking at which case effectively make sense, which one you may not, I had to have hard discussions there. With my son, I'd be just as upset. It's absolutely right. If they make the wrong move, the same reason that they put them on the ground, put guns on them, they would maybe shoot them because they're afraid or whatever training officers get with how to pull a gun and shoot real quick because of that.
And I don't want to get real into the weeds of this, and you're exactly right. I'll speak about the Kraken Center because I don't believe we're involved in litigation. I believe we are in litigation with honesty. Yeah. So that's one out. Put us on notice, which understood. But with the Kraken Center, we need to back up. And I talked to Captain Reifenberg on the way over here about that incident. I don't think we did a good job of explaining that as well as we could have. We talk about the African American citizen who said there was boys around the corner that just went by. We need to back up. We actually have video footage of a large fight that we were actually called to the area where guns were shown or observed by the callers. That's the information our officers are receiving. Once our officers get in the area, they were stopped by a citizen, and he said, I just saw those boys. They just went around the corner, and one of them had a gun. Our officers encountered them. I will discuss that with anyone. I do believe they acted accordingly. With that said, that was a kid of mine. I'd be extremely upset, as you pointed out. The real travesty is the big fight that happened down at the Kraken Center that led to all this. Someone was out there running around with a gun. There was one of the young men actually said, yes, you're talking about so-and-so. He had a gun. So there was a gun out there involved in that incident. And I do believe our officers handled that incident appropriately.
Oh, when he mentioned the fact that it would have been a different reaction if there were African American child involved in the house, different reaction for American or Hispanic.
I like to think not, because we have had incidents involving Caucasian kids. So, again, this is a national problem that we're talking about. And all I can do is hold the Grand Rapids police officers to a higher standard, or to a standard that's acceptable for the community, to interact with the community. If we see, as I mentioned, there was a name out there, it was in the news, Officer Penn, who put the gun to the young man's head while he was handcuffed. He had to go. We were moving for termination. He just decided to resign. So that's where I'm saying I'm not going to sit here and say bad incidents don't happen and that the outcomes are not always desired. What I will say, we'll hold every officer to a standard because the community holds us to a standard.
So right now, what is a black mother or father supposed to tell their child on how they're supposed to act? Just like my son, we live on Division near Elger. He's just running down to the video store, and the Grand police officer stopped him. And so happened, I'm driving by. So I get home and call his phone officer. I said, why are you stopping him? Well, he's running, and he has his change in like a Elto box. I said, that's just where he keeps his change. But he had no reason. He just decided to stop him because he was a black boy running down the street. So what do you, as a black mother, every time your child get in the car, you got to go over and keep this in the car and go over what you got to do, show your hands, where everybody don't have to do that. So what are you supposed to tell that black mother when her 11-year-old girl gets arrested, handcuffed, when you're looking for a hand, we presume is older, and then you also getting guns pulled out? So what do you tell them?
I don't want to dominate this,
No,
but
you can skip over.
Sure. One thing I keep mentioning is the standard that we hold our officers to. We have an internal affairs division where anyone can make a complaint. It doesn't even have to be the person. In fact, the young man that had the gun pointed to us, that I don't know if he knows to this day what the outcome of Officer Penn employment with the Grand Rapids Police Department was. That was self-reported by internally, but anyone can make a complaint. It could be done anonymously over the phone. You don't have to show up. We used to have something in place where you had to come down and sign a piece of paper with internal affairs. That has long changed. Like I said, you can call up and not need to leave your name. You don't even have to be the person involved in the incident, and our internal affairs unit will look into it. Something you brought up, the ACLU published a Know Your Rights card. We are in the process now, and sometimes with government, you don't know what one hand's doing on one side, but the city commission actually commissioned somebody come up with an updated version of that. We're going to get together and talk to what they've come up with and what we've come up with to bring it into the 2018 on Know Your Rights and how you can go about making complaints, what to do when you're stopped, those type things. So we're trying to get the word out there as much as we can. I believe we'll have it on our website as soon as it's put up. And I do know the ACLU has one already. And in fact, one that we're looking at was one that was produced by the ACLU and the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. So all those things are being done. But again, what do you tell that parent when they're encountered? That's hard. I have kids, and I appreciate that. Law enforcement and what we're tasked to do at times creates those type of incidents. That's why we have our policies and procedures, which are being reviewed right now by 21st Century Policing. We have a task force set up to go over all of our policies and procedures. We're going through CALIA standards. I wish I knew exactly what that acronym stood for, but it basically is a gold standard throughout not just the United States, but internationally, that they look at your policies and procedures, and if you meet certain standards, you get the gold standard. We're hosting the national convention this summer coming up here, so we hope to get our accreditation this summer, where we've had our policies and procedures reviewed. A little self-serving, and I'll get off the mic. March 7th, I think, in this room, 21st Century Policing will have a one of our public meetings, and I would encourage everyone to come out and to hear what the task force has been doing over the last 4 months and what we intend to do.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I used the word environment earlier because I tell young people it's important that you understand where you are, who else is there, and have that contact when you are engaged with that officer. tough to tell a young child that you have to really be cognizant of how you may not feel that as a 12-year-old kid you are threatening someone. The reality is there are a lot of people looking at you to feel threatened. You need to recognize that, sensitive to that, so that you don't unintentionally escalate a situation or make someone feel uncomfortable to the point where they react negatively to their
One last question. We're going to go to the audience. What is your police force doing about racial bias? We know that based on a report that there is a problem with that in your department. So what are you guys doing about it, and what institutional changes are you?
I think what we're looking at is something, a term that's been used as implicit bias, where people, every person in this room has some bias. What we are looking at within the law enforcement community is how does that how does that affect your job? What we've done, we've had some training along that line. Every person in the department has gone through it so that we recognize the biases that we may have that are implicit in nature, not explicit. Explicit, come to IAU, give me a call. I'll give you everyone a car. We'll deal with the explicit bias. That's where you outright have somebody who's conducting themselves in a biased nature. The implicit bias is harder to deal with. Like I said, everyone has some type of bias toward some group. There are some people who have bias toward law enforcement. It's recognizing those biases and being able to work through them is what the training that we have received and will be ongoing.
And we know everyone has biases, I think, but when it comes to criminal justice in the police, it can be life altering if they have a bias. So that's why when they do studies and everything, talking about that is more than just training of the bias and dealing with that. You guys turn around and keep going back and dealing with it. So you're making changes on that. And what about community policing? And getting with community members to get into the community?
Yeah, we've been meeting with, just one example is GRAPS, Grand Rapids Pastors Association. That's a group that was formed. We've been meeting with them on a regular basis and talking with them. We've met with the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. They've been in and talking to them, or we've had dialogue with them. The chief is co-chair of the ALPAC, which is something that the federal government has started. That's basically bringing community members together with law enforcement, discussing the issue. I can go on and on and on about community policing. On base is the program.
So you're meeting with community members. A lot of those are organized.
Sure.
So you're meeting with actual members in the community,
yeah.
so they can get and build up that trust.
And to circle back, where I think it's even more important is that beat officer out there who's not coming to organized meetings. Get to know the people in your community. Something I'm looking at, what we need to do is be more strategic in our enforcement. Part of 21st century policing, they looked at our staffing and deployment. They said we could use more officers, but our deployment is something is acceptable within the standards of the industry. What I think is gonna come out of this report is what are we telling our officers to do? Historically, we have a homicide at let's say Fulton End Division. We send officers in there, flood the area, strict enforcement. There's guns out there. Go and get those guns. I think what we're moving toward, what I'm pushing to do, and since there's a chief and I'm number 2, along with my counterpart, I have some say in it. But the direction we're going in, like with those business cards, let's be more strategic. Officers know who's doing those things in your community. The community knows who's doing it. So Mrs. Jones doesn't get stopped for a headlight out. Now you may get stopped. Hey, Mr. Jones, fix your light, but we're not asking to search your car. But like I said, people in the community know Eric is a knucklehead in the community who's out there terrorizing the community, who's shooting up the community. Eric dealing dope in the community. All right, officers, let's focus on Eric. Now, when Eric has the hell light out, then Eric's going to be talked to a little more. still, Eric has rights, so we're going to do it legal within our policies and procedures. Those are the type of things I think we're moving forward.
So we go to the audience. Okay, as I stated before, there's 2 mics on your side. We're asking questions, not telling stories. So if anyone that have any questions, you please come to the mic, and then the officer, you can say who you want to address, or you all 3 to address your question. Does anyone have a question? There's mics on either side.
While he's going to the mic, if you do have stories or concerns afterward, Captain Reifenberg and I are here. We're glad to talk to you.
Okay, you have a question?
Yes, my question is for you, Officer Payne. I'm afraid for my 13-year-old son, who is biracial. He's going to start driving soon. And there's a lot of people in the audience that are also afraid. Does GRP understand that the citizens they serve and protect are afraid of them?
And I believe there's a disconnect, and that's something we were working on constantly, trying to build that trust. But the trust comes both ways, too. There's people in the community who won't even talk to us, or they're telling their kids, you better not behave, otherwise that officer's going to lock you up. That just breaks my heart when I hear that, and I've heard it numerous times throughout my career. It goes both ways. I appreciate your concern, but we're working on it. We're trying to build that trust. Part of the 21st century policing pillars, there's 6 pillars in there. And the first one is building trust in the community. And I think we're working on it, and we will continue to work on it.
So are you in the schools where younger kids can see you guys and get to know the police officer? I know in my old days, the police officer used to come into the classroom, be in the school where you got to know the community police officer. Do you still do that?
We do, and we're going to do it more. In fact, I'm meeting with Mr. Johnson, who's the assistant superintendent of GRPS schools, tomorrow. We've been trying to meet up, but we're already doing it. We have officers involved in reading programs. We have our Camp O'Malley that have groups every summer out to Camp O'Malley. We have our Boys and Girls Club. We have one on the west side of the Style Center, Paul I. Phillips. We have officers in there, and also CPIS Center. So it is being done. I mentioned the on-base program. We have Impact, which is a group of kids that are not necessarily law enforcement driven, but we had them look over the youth intervention policy. So we've been meeting with them. Captain Reifenberg standing back here, one of his officers, he's a rocker. We do have rock stars in our police department. He's come up with a program where he wants to have kids form bands. So it's those type things that are ongoing, and we have, and I know I'm leaving out some, we have our Explorer program, intern program, Youth Police Academy. So it's all those type of programs that we have going on. They're on our website. I know I'm probably leaving 1 or 2 off, or 3 or 4, but those are the type of programs we're involved in. And this isn't the forum for it, but with that, it's very tough with our staffing levels. We should have a responsibility to be out here responding to calls for service and to be able to investigate those calls. So we are strained with what we can do with community outreach, but we are finding a way to do it.
I know that your department is actually understaffed, and you guys also do need a lot more officers. That's something that I've actually brought up several times. Now, regarding that, have you guys thought about bringing out police resource officers to schools? I think it's very important instead of arresting the children that are in the school as a prevention method for that. Because, these kids are going to eventually grow up, and sometimes these kids don't grow up in the best environment possible. And so it's always best to start at a young age. I myself am doing work through Curtin Middle School, try and help in some way or another with these kids. But I would really like the support of a kind of opening of a police resource officer for every school district. That's very important. What do you think about that?
Okay, I'm about ready to get myself in trouble. First of all, we are doing it. There are officers in school, and they are part of weekly reading program. I'm going to get myself in trouble. We did receive a grant a few years ago to have school resource officers. It wasn't just GRPS, but it was a lot of GRPS schools, and some religious schools, like Catholic Central. It was a number of officers that we received a grant for. And I don't know the exact details, so I don't want to get myself too far in trouble. But for whatever reason, GRPS pulled out. And part of it was, we talk about it, I mentioned the national news that comes up the media, which we haven't talked about at all here tonight. But the media, there was an incident where a school resource officer pulled a young girl out of her death, probably really brutalized her. That was right at the time when we were trying to get school resource officers, and that could have been the reason why Grand Rapids Public Schools pulled out. I 100% agree with you. If we had staffing, we would have them in there. And again, that's something we're going to continue. We have a good partnership with GRPS also. Could it be better? We're working on it.
All right, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in favor of police schools, particularly elementary schools. If they have to be in secondary schools, and we want their duties to be limited to providing safety for the students and staff in those buildings, and not engaging in any disciplinary activity or the other activities that officers in schools are involved in based on research that we have done.
I remember being told a few years back that we need aggressive officers in the most dangerous communities. This is told by a police officer. Because, and we know every now and then they will cross the line, but you can't have timid people in dangerous neighborhoods. It was three-way. I mean, one of the reasons your son or our son may not trust you. Sometimes they will see the more aggressive officers, the less timid or whatever. One of the problems with that thinking is, first of all, trying a neighborhood and here in the theater city, that it's just much old and everything else. Southern has the mentality of same thing we were talking about earlier, of the implicit bias of this being a violent neighborhood, somebody walking with a hoodie is necessarily dangerous because they're trying to hide themselves. Or Bill Belichick wears a hoodie all the time. So the closer we can come, I think, to not just, I mean, officers don't need to be afraid, don't get me wrong. They do hard work. We need good officers. We need fair officers. We need officers that view each person as a human being first. Then if that person gives you cause to be, that you know how to act quickly, act fairly. So a lot of issues I think that we have to deal with is moving from where we were, maybe where we are. I'm glad to hear about some of the little things. Cameras, a little cynical because sometimes when the cameras really show something, they just have not be working at that. I've got that. Okay, because some know that a bad video never can be taken away. So it's better to say it wasn't working than show the bad video.
Well, give me that case where it didn't show up. But you do bring a good point. Technology is technology. Things fail, and it does. But along that same line, that camera gives you a one-dimensional view of what's being what they can see. That's not necessarily what an officer can see. So sometimes it's not. It doesn't give the full story of what occurred when those cameras are rolling. It's just a tool, and we utilize it often in our internal affairs. We've actually hired a person because we knew attorneys and other people would employ anything. We needed somebody, an expert, to be able to provide that information when the requests are being brought in. But just keep in mind, those cameras sometimes don't tell the full story, even if it's on video.
Yeah, but just as often, the officer shouldn't be concerned about the camera if they're doing the right thing, because the camera will show what happened. I turned down a case once. Probably wasn't it. It was about pushing somebody in the car. I'm sorry, sir.
Sir.
I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
I'll just end. What these people were saying to the officer about what they were going to do to his wife, et cetera, et cetera. The officer who ended up being a little rough with the person, but not over the line, camera helped that officer.
Yeah. Our officers, if their camera breaks down, they're up getting a new one because they want to have those cameras rolling. Again, it was a camera incident that Officer Pan, it showed what he did. His actions were not tolerated. That's the exception of what we have been seeing with cameras. Our body cameras, we welcome them. In fact, I don't have mine on right now, but Captain Reichenberg, he has his on. I left mine in the office, but I wear mine occasionally when I go out also.
That's why I tell my son, turn on your phone, and then you have two cameras.
Quick technology plug.
Right.
So a few years ago, I developed an app for ACLU of Michigan. It's called Mobile Justice of Michigan. You can download in the iTunes Store or Google Play Store or our website. It provides an opportunity to film other encounters with law enforcement, not your own, and that sends video directly to us. The app also includes the right to put that information about your rights available to have that smart.
Ma'am. Thank you for waiting.
So I think we've seen some national instances of people of color being treated very aggressively. And I don't think I have a really hard time understanding how people think that there's problems there. But what I struggle with is why we never hear police officers calling out those bad police officers, those aggressive police officers. You know, I hear of this blue code that no one will ever say a bad word about another officer, because otherwise they're retaliated against. And it's the only profession that I know of where that happens. I mean, doctors know there's good and bad doctors. I'm a social worker. We know there's good and bad social workers. We all know there's good and bad in everything. It's just inherent. But I think the lack of calling attention to that brings the whole profession.
Do you mean internally, like the Grand Rapids Police Department?
Not necessarily. I mean, I do see some problems with things that happen locally too, okay. But it just feels like across the board, we just don't hear police officers holding each other accountable, and even in a public manner. I think we need to hear it to know that you do that. I mean, I know that people, it's a really tough job. I get that, and I really appreciate that, but when we don't know that those things happen, like you said at Donaldson, maybe he doesn't even know that the guy that held the gun to him is gone. Maybe he needs to know that. Maybe we as a community need to know that. Maybe we need to publicize that more.
Newsday did a pretty good job covering it. Just Google it. Officer Sean Penn. Newsday does not miss much when we've done something wrong. It's out there.
Yeah, I think her point is, though, like people pulling over Black and Hispanic more, that police officers are not calling each other. That you're making the whole force look bad. Because right now, based on that report, we still have to raise our kids that there's certain things you got to do if you're going to be pulled over more. And we know all the spots where they're going to be pulled over more.
Yeah, and I mentioned Walter Scott. That's just one justified. How they would say that, I'd love to talk about it. Is everyone familiar with that incident? It was a gentleman that was running from a traffic stop followed the officer. He broke away from him. Somebody walking through a park, I believe, he started videotaping the encounter. The officer pulled his gun and shot the guy in the back and killed him. Even worse yet, worse killing him, but he knowingly picked up a taser and put it up next to the guy's body to try to maybe justify in his mind. I don't think he went to work that day thinking he was going to kill Walter Scott. There's something where, well, use your term, there was something going on. He made a bad decision. He was called out and he was prosecuted for it. He's doing time for it. You're in Harvard. They should be prosecuted. Baltimore talking about disbanding their police department because of the things that are going on there. I think it is out here in the news and people are aware of it.
It's just the same because I personally know officers locally, and the implicit bias is I mean, so it's, an acquaintance, and they are a white person, and to hear them talk about black people, the way they talk about them, it's like, has a white person ever treated you bad? And you generalize that to the whole race of white people? So different in the way they look at it.
Not to put you on the spot, it was Grand Rapids, Colorado Internal Affairs Unit. College Sheriff's Department, they have internal affairs also. And part of the problem, I'm sorry, real quick, part of the problem is with people in the community also. Myself, when I was pulled over by the MSC trooper, I didn't follow up on it. I should have. I know better. Follow up on those things.
Attorney, before you get to that, can we get the gentleman's question real quick? Do you remember what you said?
You are absolutely right, but I would disagree just a little bit with that it doesn't exist elsewhere. Whether there's power, whether it's prestige, the large organizations, or whatever you want to have, there is a tendency to look the other way to hide. I have been honored to represent over 100 different states. We're dealing with the issue every day of how the man could have done this for 20 years. And you're not see it, don't want to see it, don't want to out him, and your prestige of your program is more important than the person who's supposed to serve. The police department is the club. They put their lives on the line, they feel they do what they do. And so it is a very close club. In 40 years that I've been, I have seen very, very few officers that will break that code. Robert Barnes did it. Eric Clarkson case 30 years ago, and he was hard on him. That I look at it a different way. I try to look at it. We will sue also another officer that is right there that doesn't do it. So what you do is empower that you don't do it. The fact that an officer doesn't turn out how people put out those wrong people. That's a lot of that officer that are going to work every day for that officer. I'm a little cynical. I think holds much wrong than that. We got to attack it. But there are exceptions. Somebody with one pointed gun may have said either not or otherwise. This is all. There are exceptions for the that do that. That possible to make it better work.
Sir, thank you for waiting.
that are working to reduce mass incarceration. We're focused on everything available reform, and reforming our parole. But also recognize the fact that addresses what happens when one gets too. So his question was aimed at how we can do so, how we can reduce pressure. I think we many of those triggering factors from by training ways in which officers go about their job. It, we begin to let the numbers of people who are sitting in jail go. It's not sitting in jail. Someone sitting in jail because they don't have $100, $200. They're spending $35,000 a year spending plenty of time. But let's start with the bias that we talked about. That's something that we're working on to recognize. But in law enforcement, we recognize, if you look at the sphere, we're the entry into the criminal justice system. Sometimes you don't take into account there's also prosecutors and judges, and ultimately juries that send people to prison. I've never sent anyone to prison. I've arrested a lot of people. Now, actually, they're taken a plea for a jury and convicted. So we're the tip of that spear of criminal justice system. So we're responding to your question. It's just law enforcement. We have legislators involved in it. When citizens grab recently decriminalized marijuana, and like actually people left with a for a small amount of marijuana. It's like 2.5 pounds, a lot of marijuana. I would value one that way. No, marijuana possession in the city of Grand Rapids is actually less than it's still a fraction. So they take that as law enforcement. I don't think that citizens decide. I would enforce the laws that are out there. Sometimes they have discretion. There's some things they don't have discretion with. But we recognize the that of the criminal justice system is that corruption involves more than just law. I think he recognized that. I think that police practice a huge role, right? I won't say huge, but I agree there's a role there. As I mentioned before, as we use police, we have homicide areas, but the area, strict enforcement. Well, there's a lot of collateral damage that happens. No, we may eventually get that murderer, but there's a lot of people that term happen. I think we've learned that that's not what to do. It's just people that are actually committing crimes in the community, having that's the direction that we're moving forward.
I concerned is when we think of the kind of CEO, I think it involves people from our community that represent community, and it seems to me if at this point because of things that may not be drawing, it may not be able to people want to law enforcement. And I'm wondering any for people in families going to law enforcement that there but they also understand the rules the city has. So if you know have business so community these
the recruitment, I could have a community reality of no one it's national right now to be with law enforcement. And actually it doesn't approve of it. I mean, on the police officer, you're putting the right signs out of job. You work 85 Monday, Friday, you work night, work day. You would be occasionally will you every police we have one and hopefully you can attract the people regardless of the what so I have a work love I keep that thing out every recruiting love for the job. But that I love making fun of they is when it try to hear the they understand when it comes to how to lead someone that like the which they that time I don't know but that was the one thing and it that people want to come up with my is dealing with I out of that and so that our in America but and you um the training but their measurement they need more we have training measure their ability I mean, have once we let program I mean, but it's third level they for the cap that offer and they were going now. Yeah, reach one when we are on